I hate to admit it. In fact, I'm not totally comfortable telling you about it. But here it goes. Once my mother tried to kill me. She really did. I'm not joking about this. My mother actually tried to kill me, and it wasn't when I was a teenager. When in high school, let's just say I made several less than stellar decisions. In those moments, my mother would only scream, "Reed, I'm going to wring your neck." No, when I was 8 years old, my mother actually tried to kill me. Let me explain a little bit more. My mother, who turns 86 years old this month, Beverly Louise Lessing, back in the day, Beverly could cook the biscuits. Oh my, could she cook the biscuits? These were biscuits that Colonel Sanders would envy. And as a little child, about 8 years old, I would wonder about the secret ingredient to these awesome biscuits. One day while she was fixing up a new batch of biscuits, our dog got loose, and here was my chance. As she searched for the dog, I would search for the secret ingredient. The biggest container on the kitchen table was marked flour. Always being a little bit slow to catch on, I figured the flour is the secret ingredient, so I took a big spoon and put a big amount of flour in my mouth, and what did I say? Yuck. It's not the flour. So then I thought was the shortening, and the shortening tasted awful. And finally, really the last big container was marked baking powder. And so I took an extra large spoon and put it into the baking powder container and put that into my mouth. And long before this was a saying, I said it first. Gag me with a spoon. Literally. Just at that point, it finally dawned upon me. My mother was trying to kill me, right? Well, wrong, you understand, right? Beverly Louise Lessing was taking what is very bitter on its own. She was taking what is bitter and working those bitter ingredients into biscuits that are absolutely beautiful. The secret is in understanding how it all works together. Throughout most of the book of Job, Job thinks God is trying to kill him, right? Literally. As we come to Job chapter 23 today, though, Job has this remarkable confession, doesn't he? Job 23:10, one of the most delightful verses in the whole book. Job says, when God, that is when he tested me, I will come forth as gold. Here Job understands God is not trying to kill him. Here Job understands that God is after a golden character, right? A mature faith, a person who's humble and has depth and insight. Here Job understands that God is taking all of his bitter experiences and working them together to create something beautiful. Beautiful as what? Gold. The secret. The secret is in understanding how it all works together. There are 5 ingredients to this recipe. And let me warn you, most of these ingredients in the book of Job taste awfully bitter. First ingredient, shock. Shock. When your world falls apart. Talk about gag me with a spoon. Oh my. We're never prepared for the shock of our lives, right? We're never prepared when we're just sitting at our desk or we're driving in traffic and we get that phone call or that text or that email and we hear about that tragedy. We're never prepared when we're at the doctor's office and he utters the C word. Cancer. About every other year, I go to a place called Camp Arcadia. The director of that camp has the audacity every Friday to have a polar bear plunge. Stan Shyman's sitting right over there. Stan's on the board of directors at Camp Arcadia. Stan has probably done the polar bear plunge, right? Well, this is in northwest Michigan, and Lake Michigan is never warm, even in August, right? But being slow on the uptake, I'm always part of the polar bear plunge. And as much as I try and prepare myself for that ice-cold Lake Michigan water, it still sends a shock and a shiver through my system. As much as we know sooner or later tragedy will visit all of us. We know the cold water's coming sooner or later, but when it hits, it is still a massive shock. In fact, Job chapter 2 verse 13 says that when Job had his polar bear plunge, he sat and stared in silence for 7 straight days. For 7 days, Job didn't say a word. Shock. When your world falls apart, there's another bitter ingredient to this recipe, and it's silence. Silence. When God doesn't show up, that's what most of Job chapter 23 is all about, our first reading this morning, right? Job is looking everywhere for God. God, where are you? In fact, in Job chapter 23, 8 and 9, Job says, I went to the west. I didn't find him there. I went to the east. I went to the north. I went to the south. All the 4 points on the horizon and compass, and God is a no-show. Where are you, God? Silence. When God doesn't show up. Many of you know by now, since we've been in Job for over a month, that God doesn't say anything from chapter 3 to the end of chapter 37. That's 35 chapters of silence. God, where are you? For years I've known Matthew 7:7. You know it, right? Jesus says, ask, it will be given. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. And so, when I'm in the shock, I claim Matthew 7:7. I ask, I seek, I knock. And you know what happens sometimes? God doesn't respond. It's divine silence. I ask, I seek, I knock, and God doesn't respond. So we go from shock when our world falls apart to silence when God just is a no-show. There's another bitter ingredient to the recipe. Struggle. Struggle. When you don't understand. When you just don't understand. Job chapter 23 verse 2 in our reading, he says, even now my complaint is bitter. We know about bitter complaints with God, don't we? Why? Why this? Why this now? Why this now to me? Why is this now happening to me? Why did my husband walk out on me? Why did my wife die? Why was my child born with spina bifida? Why didn't I get that promotion? Why didn't we close on that house? That's how Job begins, chapter 23. This is how he ends. The last verse in chapter 23 of Job, verse 17. Job says, I am not silenced by the darkness or by the thick darkness that covers my face. See, God may be silent, but Job is not. Even the darkness, Job says, the thick darkness that covers his face, he has no idea what's going on. But he's not silenced. See, life can get really dark, can it? The darkness can push us down and keep us down until we stay down. But Job says, even at that point, I'm going to keep struggling. I'm not going to give up on God. It looks like God has given up on me, but I'm not giving up on God. And you know as well as I do that when we struggle and hold on, even when the thick darkness covers our faces, that we advance from our adversity. We learn from our losses. We profit from our problems. We're transformed by our troubles if we just keep on keeping on. Every bone in our body wants to believe this four-letter word from the pit of hell. And what would that be? Q-U-I-T. Just what? Quit. Give up. Throw in the towel. But when we are in this struggle and we don't understand, Job is our model and our message. Keep struggling. Keep wrestling. Refuse to be silent even when God is. There's a fourth part to this recipe. Sanctification. Big word. Sanctification simply means that God is making us more like Jesus. That's it. Sanctification, God's program to make me more like Jesus. So sanctification, when God turns evil into good. Quite often, I think that God's plan for my life is to make me happy. And I hate to break the news to you again this morning, but that's not the plan. It's just not the plan. God's plan is to make me holy, to make me more like Jesus, to sanctify me. And that means that my problems have a purpose. They really do. My problems have a purpose because God is turning evil into good. Anyone can turn good into good, but this God, our God, the only God, turns evil into good. Job chapter 42, verse 10, another stellar verse in the book of Job. It really is the key to understanding the book. Where we have these words, and God restored the fortunes of Job. Now, what does that mean? It sounds like he's on the wheel of fortune or something. It doesn't mean that. It's a famous Hebrew phrase. It means that God reverses the curse. When God restored the fortunes of Job, he reversed the curse. And then 42:10 continues to say, and God gave Job twofold everything back. Did you hear that? That at the end of the book, Job gets everything back twofold. What looked like the end was anything but. God reversed the curse. He turned Job's evil into good. On that Good Friday as well, when Jesus shed that blood for all of us, that also looked like it was the end, right? These events happen in staccato-like fashion, arrested abruptly, tried unjustly, sentenced callously, mocked repeatedly, beaten brutally, abandoned ruthlessly, crucified repeatedly and barbarously. But risen triumphantly, God reversed the curse. Easter morning is back in Job 42, verse 10. God restored the fortunes of Jesus, right? There's nothing dead about Christ. He has conquered death, and death has no more dominion over him. God turned evil into amazing, transforming good. What's it mean? It means that our nightmares are not random events that serve no purpose. You can't look at this picture and say that anymore. Our nightmares are not random events that serve no purpose. They are wounds inflicted in a cosmic battle between good and evil, and God, sanctification, is turning evil into good. That's what Paul says. Paul, in Romans chapter 8, we know that God works good in all things, not most things, not some things, not just her things or their things. There's that word, all things. So that we are conformed to the image of his Son. Look what Paul doesn't say. Paul doesn't say all things are good. All things are not good. They hurt us and harm us and mess with our minds. Look what Paul doesn't say again. Paul doesn't say, wouldn't it be nice if? Or I've got a reluctant hunch that. No, Paul says we know. We're convinced that the God of Job, 42:10, the God of Job, the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, takes what is bitter and works it together to create something amazingly beautiful. And how beautiful is this? So that we are conformed to the image of his Son. Sanctification. When God turns evil into good. Fifth ingredient, service. Service. When we use our pain, that nightmare, that horror, when we actually use that for God's glory. Now, what does that mean? That means my mess is my message. All of my tests, that's my testimony. You see, the very thing I am so ashamed of, the very thing I wish would have never happened, the very thing I wish would have never shown up, that very thing is my testimony to the world. Who better can help someone who's going through a divorce than someone who's gone through a divorce? Who better can help someone who had alcoholic parents than someone who had actually had alcoholic parents? Who better to help someone who's going through an addiction than someone who's actually gone through an addiction? The very thing you and I want to hide and forget and deny is the very thing God wants us to use to bless other people. Service. When we use our pain for God's glory. Most of these are pretty bitter ingredients, aren't they? None of us wants the polar bear plunge, the shock, and then the silence, and then the struggle, and then the sanctification, and then finally, service. What's it all mean? It means there's a plan. There really is a plan, a divine plan where God is working all things for my good and His glory. And the secret is in understanding how it all works together. Job puts it this way: when He has tested me, I will come forth as gold. I invite you to stand and thank God for it.